Hey, quick heads up before we get rolling. If you're building something big and need a boost, papernapkinwisdom.com has a stack of free tools ready for you. Strategy, mindset, leadership, all there, totally free. You can even hit the link in bio on social media and let's level up.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 285. And today, we're diving into a conversation that might just change how you think about your career. Have you ever wondered why some leaders seem to expand year after year, while others feel like they're standing still even after decades in the same role? What if there were a single question you could ask yourself that would unlock new growth, not just for this year, but for every year that follows? My guest today is Kendra MacDonald, CEO of Canada's Ocean Supercluster, a leader who has transformed organizations by focusing on innovation, adaptability, and the power of growth. In this episode, she shares a perspective that can shift how you look at your own career and leadership path. And as you listen, I invite you to think, what would change if you treated this year differently than every year before? Let's dive into episode 285 with Kendra MacDonald. Let's listen in. Kendra MacDonald, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Pleasure to be here.
So I love that we're talking about ocean supercultures. I just came back from a trip down in the Caribbean and got to experience some oceanic life that I've never seen before in my life. So I'm excited to talk about this with you. But we're not going to talk about superclusters. We're going to talk about your paper napkin, which was make sure your career is 25 years, not 1 year, 25 times. What will you learn this year? Why did you share that with me?
Yeah, so I actually first heard that in university. So one of my professors said that. And I will say at the time when you're 22, I heard it. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. Of course, in that moment by 25, I was going to have my job and my husband and my kids. And 25-year career seemed really long and really far. But I think, as my career progressed, that stuck with me for whatever reason. And I started to really use it as a way to think about what I was learning and plan out kind of the next thing in the next phase, and also to test myself to see if what I was doing was continuing to create opportunities to learn or it was time to do something else.
Well, first of all, I think we could probably do 4 or 5 episodes about the way we see the world as a 22-year-old and how things change after that, right?
Right.
Um, but but what I really I'm latching onto is this idea is that you use this as like almost a reminder to test yourself. What does that mean, test yourself? I mean, when you talk about Canada's Ocean Supercluster, I think about science. So it feels like you're testing a hypothesis for the year, or you're evaluating something against that year. What do you mean by test myself?
Yeah, so I mean, I can use Canada's Ocean Supercluster as maybe a recent example. So I, 7 years ago, had the opportunity to take on this role as CEO of Canada's Ocean Supercluster. And so at that time, I had actually been coincidentally in my previous role for almost 25 years. So it was interesting timing as we talk about this 25-year career concept. And so, you start in the role that I was in with the length of time I've been with that company. I was in a position where I was doing a lot of the mentoring. So I was teaching others, but maybe doing a little bit less of learning. And so one of the things that really attracted me to this role was the amount of learning. Now, it also terrified me. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know ocean. I hadn't worked in ocean. I hadn't been a CEO. I had been a consultant, not in an organization. So there were many things that would have been new and different. But the people I would have a chance to work with, the opportunity that it represented, and all of the learnings that I could have was part of the decision to then take it on. And then now I've been in this role 7 years. And so again, or almost 7 years, I continually challenge myself to say, okay, what is the next thing that I'm learning and growing and doing differently in this role that will be different from the previous year?
So I think a lot of people might hear this and say, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to be doing the same thing year after year for 25 years. What's Kendra talking about? Like, clearly I've advanced in my career almost automatically. Don't I get new opportunities from my employer?" But I think you're talking about it from a very different perspective, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So yes, when I started my career, I was drinking from a fire hose. You're learning lots of new things. I was working for the first time. Instead of all those things that I thought I would have at 25, I got on a plane. I moved to Australia, and so that created a whole other set of learning opportunities in terms of new culture. I had never lived away from home before, and I went from Canada to the other side of the world, and so all of a sudden I was on my own to learn all those things. I think what we're talking about here is really one is mindset and two is focus. And so if you don't know where you want to go, then any path will take you there is I guess the common expression. But if you think about, okay, where do I want to be a year from now? Then you can filter. So I love saying yes to everything. And so that has not always been to my benefit. And so it helps you filter those opportunities with the place that you want to go. So that's number one. And then I think when you have those opportunities, what are you learning from them and taking away to take into the next opportunity? So focus and mindset. So more so than just doing new things.
Yeah, and not just picking up what's in front of you. It sounds like there's a bit of a ownership or stewardship or fiduciary that you're talking about, right? Like, what do I want to learn this year versus, can I handle what's coming my way? And those are
Yeah.
different things, aren't they?
They are definitely different things. And I would say in this moment in time where it feels like so much is coming our way, I think it helps to be able to filter through that and really think about what is it that I look at what is it that I need to know? What is it that I want to know? And
Mhm.
that helps to drive where I take my learning.
One of the things when I'm working with clients, one of the things that I always remind them at some point in the planning process is that we tend to underestimate what we can achieve in a year and overestimate what we can achieve in a month. So how have you kept yourself in check, like thinking big enough every year when making those plans?
Yeah, I think it differs by year. So, one of the theories that I really like is the big rock concept. So, really looking at Stephen Covey, where you put the big rocks in first and make sure that you get those rocks in before you pour the sand all around. And so when I think through where I want to be, then I break it up and say, okay, well, what am I going to achieve in the quarter? What does that mean I need to achieve in the month? And to your point, I think it's absolutely true, right? What I think I can do this week or what I can do this month is usually overestimated. But if I make sure that I put those quarterly checkpoints in to say this is where I want to be a year from now, then that helps make sure that I get them done. I think the other thing with learning is because it's personal growth is as leaders, we tend to say, okay, well, that can be at the bottom of the pile, right? I have all these other
Mm.
things to do. I need to deal with my people. I need to deal with the family. I need to deal with the organization. I need to deal with the board. I need to, whatever those different things are. And so that learning can wait, right? I don't need to do that right now. I can say I have a number of designations, and the ethics training that I have to do is often done on December 29th because it needs to get done by December 31st, right? So I think this is, again, a mindset to say, well, I am a better leader if I am learning. I am a better leader if I am demonstrating the importance of learning and making that a priority on an ongoing basis and not just letting it drop to the bottom of the pile.
You said something really quickly that I think people will miss. You said it's important for you to learn, but it's also for you to demonstrate that you are learning. And I think that's a really subtle thing that most leaders aren't aware of. That our team will be looking at us, and we're not stepping away to sharpen the saw meaningfully. We might be taking a holiday, we might be doing those things, but we're not learning, and we're not bringing that learning back to them in a meaningful and interesting way. So how could they follow any guidance along that path, right? Demonstrating them is so important.
Yeah, I think it leads into change and transformation, right? So being open and being open to learning means that you embrace change in a different way. And one of the things that us as humans are uncomfortable with is change. And I think one of the things that we are living in this moment is a lot of change. And so, how you are open to that change as a leader, I'll use technology and artificial intelligence as a great example, right? With the speed with which that is moving, it creates a lot of discomfort. So, how do you, as a leader, demonstrate that you are learning and exploring and testing to create the environment where others in your organization can do that as well? Otherwise, I think sometimes as leader, if we can be the stumbling block when it comes to technology because we are the least comfortable often, and so then we're not necessarily creating the environment where others feel like they can bring that new tool or they can bring that new idea or they can suggest something different because we have sort of not necessarily intentionally sent the message that we want to stick to the status quo when we're not open to learning new things.
Yeah, so I think really two big parts of learning and demonstrating learning is this embracing of change, which I think is an interesting way of looking at learning. But you also said learning, exploring, and testing. You bring up testing again. So why is that so important to you? It's not. It feels like it's not just about the learning. It's not just about the implementation, but it feels like there's a practice element or an improvement element that's built into how you look at this. Am I missing that? Or have I caught the wrong vibe?
No, I think that's absolutely a fair comment. I think I've spent a lot of time in the innovation space. And so part of innovating is there's a lot more things that don't work than that work. And so you need to be comfortable with the testing and the learning from it not working, not just the learning from it working. So I think that that testing piece of I've learned something new and now I'm trying it out. For me, I found so I went just finished my master's, just went back to school for the second time. And I found my mindset going to school the first time and then my mindset going to school the second time was very different. My mindset the first time was, I need to get this done. My parents want to get this done. This is the thing I need to do to get the job. And you just sort of plow your way through. Whereas the second time I went because I just wanted to learn. And so then I took the courses and then I tested those theories in what I was doing to see what worked, what didn't work, what resonated, what didn't resonate. And I think that is a very important part of learning. We don't internalize the learning in a lot of cases without the practical application.
So, do you have a rigor around this? Like, do you have a schedule? How do you? Because for me, here's what ends up happening. I'll go into some of this stuff with some of the best intentions, and I'll come away with this. And I'm really good at picking up tools, so I'll go out and pick up a bunch of tools, and I'll be all excited about them, and I'll start using them right away. But I'm not sure I'm as diligent about this evaluation and testing that you're talking about. I think I'll just fly through it and I'll ready, fire, aim. And I feel like you've got a more rigor to that, and I'd love to explore that.
Yeah, so I would love to say that I'm really good at it. I do try to, you go to a conference and you hear all these different things. I've now trained myself to say, what is one thing? What is sort of one thing that I can start trying to do differently? I like, I think it's Atomic Habits that talks about, you move that dial just a little bit and then the next
Compound
little bit
interest, yeah.
more and little, and then you get the compound interest. I'm an accountant by background, so like compound interest. And so that's what I try to do. Take that one thing and then figure out how I apply it a little and then back to the testing, how it worked, and then I try a little bit more. And I will say, speaking of learning, so ChatGPT as an example with AI, and I test it. So I test it with a recipe. I test it with uh, my daughter's French assignment. I test it with. So I'm constantly sort of using it to do different use cases. And then those use cases mature, the tool itself is maturing, different tools, but I'm constantly kind of building and iterating on the things that I like it for and the things that I don't like it for. And it's also about making sure that it's helping you solve problems. So it's not just about the technology. What is the problem I'm trying to solve? I'm trying to get more efficient with using the things that are in the fridge. I'm trying to get more efficient in helping my daughter with her homework. I'm trying to get more efficient in that presentation that I'm doing, whatever those things are, but understanding the things that is actually helping me do better.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. It's almost like and I think about it this way, that by being diligent about the testing process, which can feel a little finicky at times, um, but by being diligent about the testing process, you bring yourself to a place where you bump up against the walls, that you understand the limitations of the learning that you've achieved or the tool that you've acquired, and that's a valuable thing to do, because when you then go to pick it up, you know what you've got. You're not thinking of it as a magic wand that you're just pulling out when you need saving.
Yes, and I think that again translates more broadly into the organization. So I've done my own experimenting, in this case with this tool. Now the organization is experimenting with this tool. They also have permission to bump up against walls. They also are thinking through it from the perspective of the problem that we're trying to solve. And so I think, sometimes as organizations, we want to make sure that we've got that technology strategy versus really thinking through what is the thing we're trying to solve? What are the different tools that are out there? Let's test and experiment. We'll see and understand the limitations of each. We will see maybe in this moment, we need to wait a little bit longer until there is more functionality, whatever those different things are. But again, and then I think the other big piece is the feedback loop and the experimentation, right? So
Mhm.
there's a personal feedback loop to make sure that I have actually learned from what didn't work and from what worked, and also in the organization giving permission for something not to work. What did we learn from that? How do we carry that into the next thing? And celebrating the people that tried it and didn't have it work to the same level as the people that actually ultimately got it to work. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think there are great stories about innovative organizations who ensure that they don't lose the innovation value of it not working. And very often we reprimand people for things that don't work, especially famously don't work and cause us grief or challenge. But what we lose is the organizational IQ. And also, then people follow up with a lot of faking, lying, and hiding, right? They're not going to share their problems openly. So this is where I was going to go next, which is I think that one of the great ways that as leaders we gain freedom to work on the things within the organizations, like freedom in the organization to do the things that we want to do, is by empowering leaders and managers on our teams to learn and to grow and to take on more. So having a career development plan that we're aligned with in our teams is really important. Is this how you do it in your organization as well, that you're encouraging career development of your team members?
Yeah, so I was very lucky in that I grew up in a consulting firm that had a lot of learning, and I maybe didn't appreciate it at the time, although I took advantage of it. And so I took that same approach to learning into the organization I'm with now. I was the first full time employee, but now we have a team of about 30. And so we have learning in terms of what I would say, I mean, they're often called the soft skills. I'd say the very important strategic skills around whether it's, conflict or stress management or client service. We also have individuals that have their own planning targets from a learning perspective for their particular role. And then we also do senior level development so that we make sure that we're learning as a senior team how to be a highly effective team. And again, we revisit that on an ongoing basis to say, are we getting, when we look at the next year, are we getting the right learning to help us to be successful in that year? So I didn't think about that as being unique, but we hear from different people that have come to the organization that actually is unique, certainly at the senior leadership level, to be providing that level of consistent training.
So let's really dig into this, because I think providing and encouraging and demonstrating, and you talked about this, as a leader, participating in our own learning, doing that in public, opens the door for our teams to follow behind us. I want you to it's not top down, it's not unilateral. You're not telling people what they're going to learn, right? They're a participant in that. Can you give me an example? I mean, names removed, of course, of how that kind of a conversation goes on with your team. What does that look like?
So I think, it differs. So there are layers to that conversation. So at a coaching level, between the supervisor and the individual to say, so we've talked about what your objectives are for the year. Is there any learning that would help you be able to achieve those objectives? And then what does that look like? There are other skills where we say, as an organization, we are really struggling with X. And so is there learning that we can do to be able to address this particular issue across the team? Then we also look at levels and say, okay, we are looking at our up and coming leaders. Is there some common leadership things that we want to be able to provide in terms of training? And then we offer that up. And then it's a combination. Some things are required. So, for example, as we're going through um, technology, as we're rolling out technology, we need everyone to be trained on particular technology. But then there are other things that are very specific to the individual, whether it's project management skill, or it could be a presentation skill, or
Mm.
something that would help them. And I think increasingly what we are seeing in our people is the needs are, we're a hybrid organization, sorry, we're a remote work organization. So everyone's making sure that you are listening to the unique needs of the individual.
Yeah, so somewhere, and you've gone from, you said you were the first FTE, now they're 30. So the organization's grown significantly with your leadership. Somewhere out there's somebody with a small organization, and they've two or three people, and they're like, I don't, how does this look? This sounds very expensive. This sounds like I can't afford it. What would you say to that person?
So I think, although my daughter laughs at me when I say this, she just turned 16. I think we are in such an exciting moment for access to learning. There is so much available online and for free. If you look at TED Talks, if you look at the online courses that different organizations are offering, if you look at some of the free workshops that are made available, the webinars that are available, there is so much content out there. And there are also even platforms that you can get lots of access to all kinds of different courses for a relatively low subscription fee. So I think, we're a not for profit. And so we need to make sure that we are constantly managing our learning budget. But I think that the high quality of free or low cost content that is available is incredible. I think it was already heading in that direction. And I think COVID, in terms of when we moved so quickly to so much being online, has just further accelerated the availability of information. So to me, it is actually more about having the focus and making sure people are spending time on the right things. And I think there is a vetting because not all content is created equal, but I don't think cost and size of team is a limiting factor when you look at how much is available.
Yeah, and you talked about AI earlier, right? It can be a phenomenal solution in in that direction, can't it?
It absolutely can. So then again, the trick with AI is making sure that you're vetting the quality of the content, where it's coming from, the accuracy, how it was built. There is training about AI, then there's training that's sort of being created by AI. So making sure that you understand the sources of information. But absolutely, I think again, this will continue. AI is allowing, what we have in our organization is now we can take a document, a new policy, and we can say, okay, give us 45 minutes of training that everyone gets through that is specific to this policy. So again, you're seeing more and more tailored with less and less cost.
Yeah, and one of the things I love using for that kind of thing is you can give AI starting points and ending points. So here's an idea. I have a new recruit who is joining this team for the first time. This is going to be their job description in 6 months. What skills would be very important for this person to pick up over the first 6 months? Can you suggest a training program? And it can lay it out for you. And that's an incredible resource, truly.
Yeah.
So there's really no one who is left behind anymore.
No, no. So then again, it comes back to that, focus and discipline and mindset, and not sort of being scared away by the tech. So yes, it democratizes learning at an incredible rate, which is really exciting.
I think there's a power in your paper napkin too. And the power in the napkin is the question that you end with. What will you learn this year? Because there's also a little bit of in the first statement, it's moving away from default of just being in the year and picking up what comes your way to being in a designed environment. Make sure your career is 25 years, not 1 year, 25 times. So you're designing a path, and then you're suggesting that, okay, so what is it that you're going to learn this year? You think about that big rock that is your learning, and what are you going to make that about, right? What is that priority going to be this year?
Yeah, and I will say again, I mean, this paper napkin, I've had the concept since university, so lots of life happens from university to now. It is a 30+ year career, and in some years, it's actually been personal learning. So I've said, you know what, I adopted my daughter from Kazakhstan. And so that was a very complicated process. I did it as a single mom. And so much of my learning in that 18 to 24 months was less about what I was doing at work. And it was much more about work life balance and surviving without sleep and all the fun things that come with bringing a toddler into your world. And so I think that is part of it too, is looking at sometimes the ebb and flow is you need to learn some personal things. What I would say is that the communication skills, the resiliency skills, the that work-life balance, project management skills, how do you actually take what is happening in your whole life and be able to learn from it?
What's interesting about what you just said is that, again, you've lived this, you've walked this. So what's interesting to me is that you're not saying that each year's learning plan needs to include all things from all buckets. You're really talking about there being maybe one or two focus points for the year, and life can dictate part of that too, right?
Yes, I think, if you take on too many things, I say to my team, we want get those 5 things over the line, not 25 things 3 steps forward, right? So if you apply that same logic, what are the 2 or 3 things? And those are the 2 or 3 things I absolutely want to make sure that I move forward. That means that there are other things that might be on the nice to have, back to your, month versus year. So these are the things that I absolutely want to accomplish in the year. That may mean that there's some other things this month that don't get done, so that I can make sure that those top 3 things are focused. So yes, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, but let's make sure that it's a smaller number. And I'm not always great at this because, again, back to I like to say yes to everything. But as I get, I was going to say older, more experienced,
Experienced.
more experience, I am getting better at applying that filter of, there's only so much time. So let's make sure it's being really focused in the things that I really care about.
Um, is there a risk of aiming too low? Like, what happens if, you said two or three things, but what happens if I pick one and that's all that's the one thing this year?
So, yes, well, so I think, again, it depends on the individual. So for me, I would not be satisfied if it was one thing. I would also not be satisfied if I thought it was going to take me the whole year and I got it done in 3 months, right? So I think there needs to be some, just like any objective setting. Sometimes you think that's going to be a really hard thing to achieve, and it turns out you're able to do it faster, or vice versa. You think that it's going to be, a walk in the park, and it turns out to be really complicated to do. So, but there are certain years based on everything that's on your plate that maybe one is really, really challenging because you've got, I have a mother who has dementia. I've got a daughter who's 16. I was doing my master's. We were selling a house. So, like there's different, I think you need to be fair to yourself in terms of judging how much is achievable. I think the key message is you want to stretch yourself so that you are further 12 months from now than you are today.
Yeah, I can empathize with parenting a 16-year-old daughter. I have one of my own. She's almost 17, and that is a very full-time job. So, and her expertise is clearly greater than mine at all things. So that makes it all the more challenging to know so little about everything that's going on.
Exactly right.
Right.
Another reason for learning. Yes.
Another reason for learning. Right. I think that's really interesting. But one of the things that really strikes me about this is that you've made a career of innovation. You've made a career of change management. You've made a career of implementing strategic innovation in organizations. And yet you're talking about learning some things, testing them, implementing them, being diligent about it. It almost sounds like you're slowing down the learning and implementation process, but this is how you become a strategic innovator, isn't it? Like, by learning what to say yes to and saying, most importantly, no to the other things that take you off of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is about iterating. Innovation is about iterating, and so that is a loop. I think that's constant, and I think I have applied it in my personal life and it becomes sort of a mindset of how I do things. Is this idea of iteration? Um, there was a second thing I was going to say, but I've lost it. Maybe it'll come back. So, so let's leave it there.
Yeah, no, but I think that's a lot. I think that there are really two important pieces of this that I'm getting, and it really is about that as leaders we need to do this, but by doing this we demonstrate the way and we hold the door open for our team to follow us through, right? And if
Yeah,
we're
I
not,
think I guess the other comment that did come back to me is around so innovation can also be you're going out on that limb and you're going out on your own, right? And so you believe in this thing because you have tested and you have iterated, and sometimes it takes others a while to come out on that limb with you. And so that is back to focus and mindset. So if you believe it and you've tested it and you're out there and you're doing it, like taking on this organization. It was a brand new organization with a brand new program, and there were a lot of naysayers. So being able to have the confidence and is an important part of this as well, to be able to lead others to follow into something that's new, which is what innovation is often about.
yeah, and breaking the model of conventional thinking comes from that too, right?
Yeah.
Kendra, we have been ending every show this season by evoking a great paper napkin we received from John Rulin, who not only gave us this paper napkin 11 years ago, but started a movement that really touched all corners of the world. His napkin to us was, "What you appreciate appreciates," which obviously means that when you appreciate or give gratitude to something, it appreciates in value, not only for you, but for everyone. And so we're paying forward that idea after news that he suddenly passed away late last year. But we're keeping his mission alive. So with that in mind, is there somebody that you would like to appreciate?
So I will appreciate my 16-year-old as much as I just gave her a really hard time. But I think she has really given me another new lens in which to think about learning and to think about what's important. I will also, because I talked about my journey adopting her as a single mom, I've now been married for almost 11 years. So big shout out to my husband because he plays a big role in helping me to do what I do every day. So
That's wonderful. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
I want to thank Kendra for sharing her wisdom and perspective with us today. She gave us a powerful reminder that careers are not built by simply adding years, but by intentionally growing, stretching, and learning with each year. Here's some of the key takeaways from our conversation. Don't repeat the same year 25 times. Make each one unique. Anchor your career in continuous learning. Step into discomfort as the engine of growth. Redefine success beyond time served. Measure it by impact. Build a culture of learning within your team and your organization. What about you? As you think back on what Kendra shared, consider this. What will you learn this year, and how will you apply it? How will you turn it into action? If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to Paper Napkin Wisdom wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review and share this with someone who needs it. And most importantly, put it into action. And here's your challenge. Grab a napkin, jot down what you want this year to teach you, and post it with the hashtag #PaperNapkinWisdom. Because wisdom isn't about hearing, it's about doing and taking action. And when you do, small ideas on a napkin can turn into big results. Make it a great day.